it, right?
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people do.
It's that gnawing sense in the back of your mind that something has just fundamentally shifted. That uh, maybe the dynamic of the world hasn't just changed organically.
Right.
That it's actually turned against you, not by accident, but by design.
Exactly. It's a very specific kind of friction.
Yeah, you feel it in the office, you see it in the media,
Hmm.
maybe even in the way history is being taught to your kids right now. You're constantly told that your instincts are wrong, that your ambition is quote unquote toxic.
Right. And that your history is basically just a catalog of errors and oppression.
And when you bring this up, when you say you feel this slow burn of disrespect, what happens? You're told you're just being paranoid.
Or that you're just resistant to progress, that you're standing in the way of equality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, we are doing a deep dive into a text that argues the exact opposite. It claims that you aren't crazy and you aren't paranoid. You are being targeted.
It is a fascinating, heavily researched argument.
It really is. We are looking at the explosive ebook called Leftists Eat Themselves, Deconstructing Marxist Ideology by Conrad Riker. And look, before we get any further into this, I need to say this right off the bat.
Yeah, you really need the source material for this one.
You do. If you want to survive the culture war, if you want the actual instruction manual, you need to get this book. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy Leftists Eat Themselves.
It's not a light read, but it is an essential one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while you are pulling that up on your phone or tablet, do us a huge favor. Hit that like and subscribe button on our feed right now. We're going to be covering some intense ground today, and you are going to want to stay plugged in.
For sure.
So let's just jump right into it. What is the core premise here? Because Riker isn't just complaining about wokeness on the internet, right?
No, not at all. He's building a very structural, historical argument.
Okay, so break that down for us. What is the thesis?
So Riker's core argument is that the Marxist project didn't actually fail.
Even though everyone assumes it died when the Berlin Wall fell.
Right. We think of it as this 20th century economic failure. But the book argues that the ideology didn't die, it just swapped its target.
Swapped its target to what?
It moved from economic class, the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, to gender. Specifically, he posits that it shifted to targeting men in order to dismantle what he calls the natural order.
Wow. Okay, so instead of eat the rich, it's essentially
Eat the men.
eat the men. That is wild.
Yeah, the book argues the goal was to capture modern institutions. So we're talking schools, HR departments, the courts, and the ultimate aim is to break the male spirit.
And he's writing this for a very specific audience, isn't he?
He is. It's clearly intended for men who are already somewhat awake to this. Men who identify as red-pilled, men's rights activists, or honestly just any guy who feels that institutional friction we were just talking about.
Well, let's start with the workplace, because I think that's where you first really hit that wall. Riker uses this term, and I want to make sure we define it because it sounds almost hyperbolic at first. The gynocracy.
Yes, the gynocracy.
What does he actually mean by that in a corporate setting? Because surely he's not just saying, oh, there are female bosses now, and that's bad.
No, he's very careful to distinguish that. It's not about women simply being in leadership positions.
Okay.
He defines the gynocracy as a systemic framework where female grievance is elevated to the status of moral truth, while male competence is treated as a pathology.
Wait, a pathology? Like a literal disease?
Precisely. According to the book, in what he calls the socialist workplace, merit and competence are actually punished, and identity is rewarded.
How does that actually play out day to day, though?
He describes this thing called the double bind that men face in corporate environments now.
The double bind. Walk us through that.
It's a total catch-22. If a man is assertive, decisive, and takes charge of a project, he is immediately flagged as toxic or aggressive.
Right, he's taking up too much space.
Exactly. But if he realizes that and tries to play it safe, if he keeps his head down, stays quiet, doesn't rock the boat, then he's labeled as passive or disengaged.
So there's literally no winning. You're penalized for leading and you're penalized for following.
Right. Riker argues there is no correct way to be a man in this system.
It feels like the game is completely rigged.
Yeah.
But does he back this up with actual evidence, or is he just kind of airing grievances?
Oh, he brings receipts. One of the main pieces of evidence he cites is the famous Google HR leak from 2018.
Oh, I remember hearing about this.
Yeah. The book highlights that in this leaked training module, traits like confidence and direct communication were explicitly flagged as signs of male bias.
Confidence is a bias. That's just being good at your job.
Not according to that framework.
Yeah.
Riker points out that from an evolutionary perspective, men are naturally wired for direct action and confidence.
Right.
So by labeling those specific traits as a bias, these corporations are effectively taking the biological default of men and labeling it as a defect.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It's essentially outlawing male nature in the office.
And it goes even further than that. Riker also digs up these DEI training slides from Google in 2022.
Okay, what did those say?
He points specifically to slide 37, which allegedly stated, word for word, "Male pain is not a priority. Our focus is on marginalized identities."
Male pain is not a priority. That is stark, just out in the open.
Riker calls it the quiet part, said out loud. He says this proves that the institutional goal isn't equality at all, it's replacement.
Wow.
He ties this into a psychological concept called the women are wonderful effect. It's a documented social bias where people subconsciously associate more positive attributes with women than with men.
And he's saying that bias has been weaponized by HR departments.
Exactly. Under this dinocracy, male ambition isn't seen as a resource for the company. It's treated like a public health risk that needs to be managed and suppressed.
There was another example in that workplace chapter that really stuck out to me, the Goldman Sachs story.
Oh, the collusive bonding incident?
Yes. Okay, explain this because I found this totally baffling at first.
It's a really fascinating case study. Basically, there is an official HR investigation into a group of male traders at Goldman Sachs because they had a private Discord server.
Right, a private chat. And what were they talking about? Insider trading,
No, they were talking about hiking and playing poker.
hiking, and poker.
Yep, and the HR department officially labeled this as collusive bonding.
Collusive bonding. I mean, usually when you hear collusion, you think of like corporate espionage.
Yeah.
What does that even mean in this context?
Well, in organizational psychology, it usually implies a group conspiring against management. But Riker notes that in this specific case, the term was applied simply because these men were gathering exclusively with other men.
So the collusion was just having friends.
Basically. Riker argues that the modern corporate state views bonded men as an inherent threat.
Why?
Because if men are loyal to each other, if they have that brotherhood, they aren't fully dependent on the corporation or the state for their social validation.
Nice.
So that bond has to be investigated. It has to be broken up or labeled as exclusionary. The system fears bonded men.
That makes perfect sense. And it's the perfect transition to the next part of the book. Because if they were trying to break these bonds in the boardroom, Riker points out that the conditioning starts way earlier.
Long before they get a job.
Right, in the classroom. He dedicates a whole section to what he calls the emasculation of education.
Honestly, this is one of the darkest chapters in the whole deep dive.
It really is.
He argues that schools have essentially become re-education camps. Their primary function now is to pathologize normal boy behavior, things like high energy, roughhousing, stoicism, and treat it all as toxic.
Yeah, he shares that story about the 12-year-old boy in Colorado. That was tough to read.
The one in the mental wellness circle.
Exactly. So picture this. A middle school class is forced into this emotional check-in circle. Everyone is supposed to be sharing their feelings, crying, being vulnerable. And this one kid, this 12-year-old boy, he just sits there. He folds his arms, keeps his jaw tight, and absolutely refuses to cry.
And what happens? Because of that refusal, he gets sent to the school counselor.
He gets written up for not crying.
Yeah. Riker actually cites the counselor's report, which claimed the boy was displaying signs of toxic masculinity because he was, quote, emotionally closed off.
Which is insane.
Right, because Riker frames this completely differently. He argues that the boy wasn't broken, he was displaying stoicism, he was holding it together under pressure.
Which for thousands of years was considered a virtue.
Exactly. But the modern school system treated his natural masculine stoicism as a mental disease that needed curing. They want to crush that instinct before it can fully form.
And it's not just about emotions, it's about how boys play. He brings up the famous Pop-Tart incident in Texas.
Right, the kindergartner.
Yeah, a 5-year-old kid chews a breakfast pastry into the vague shape of a pistol, goes pew-pew, and gets suspended from school.
On the surface, people just call that a zero-tolerance policy gone wrong, just bureaucratic stupidity.
But Riker says it's much deeper than that.
He does. He argues that suspending a child over a pastry isn't about physical safety. A Pop-Tart can't hurt anyone. It's about policing the male imagination.
Policing the imagination.
Yes. They are pathologizing the innate male instinct to play at being a warrior, to be a protector or a fighter. By severely punishing the pastry gun, they are trying to shame the instinct itself out of the boy.
So they're punishing natural behavior in the present. But they don't stop there. They also attack the role models of the past.
The erasure of great men.
Right. I think most people listening have noticed that history curriculums are changing, but Riker lays out the actual strategy behind it.
And again, he connects this directly back to Marxist theory.
How so?
In classical Marxism, they reject the great man theory.
That's the idea that history is driven by unique, powerful individuals, right?
Exactly. Marxism rejects that in favor of collective struggle. They believe individuals don't actually matter, only the masses do. So any historical figure who exemplifies exceptional male achievement is a threat to that worldview.
Which is why we're seeing figures like Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, Winston Churchill just slowly scrubbed out of textbooks.
Rubbed out or entirely villainized. The book points to schools in Sweden as an example. They now teach Viking explorers not as brave seafarers or master navigators, but simply as early imperialists.
Wow.
They strip all the courage and adventure out of the achievement and just replace it with this heavy moral judgment.
He also goes after the New York Times 1619 Project pretty hard in this section.
He views the 1619 Project as the ultimate modern expression of this Marxist rewriting of history.
Because of how it treats capitalism.
Yes. The book argues that the project attempts to reframe American capitalism, which Riker sees as the direct fruit of male innovation, risk-taking, and industry, as being entirely the result of slavery and oppression. It delegates all male achievement to theft.
And what is the psychological endgame of that? If a kid grows up thinking Edison was just a villain, why does that matter to the system?
Riker argues it's about neutralizing ambition at the root. If you tell boys that their ancestors were monsters, you guarantee that they won't aspire to be heroes.
Because they carry that inherited guilt.
Exactly. If your grandfather was a hero, you spend your life trying to live up to him. But if you're taught he was a monster, you spend your life apologizing for him. It breaks the psychological lineage.
And that concept of lineage brings us to where the book gets really controversial. Because Riker claims this whole process, the woke HR, the schools, the history, isn't just accidental.
No, he traces it directly to the source code of Marxism.
And it all centers on the destruction of the family.
This is really the intellectual core of the deep dive. He points straight to Friedrich Engels. Specifically, Engels' work, the origin of the family, private property, and the state.
Most people hear Marxism and just think about factories and workers. Why were they so obsessed with a family unit?
For Engels, it was purely economic. He argued that the traditional nuclear family is the primary engine of capitalism.
How does that work?
Well, as long as a man has the freedom to work, accumulate resources, and pass that private property down to his biological children, capitalism will always survive.
Right, because he's building generational wealth for his specific lineage.
Precisely. So Riker argues that in order to destroy capitalism, the Marxists realized you have to disrupt that lineage. You absolutely must break the bond between the father and the family. The family has to be abolished.
That puts a completely different spin on the whole smash the patriarchy slogan. It's not just a social movement, it's economic warfare.
It is. And Riker actually draws a very chilling historical parallel here to Maoist China.
During the Cultural Revolution.
Yes. During that time, the state actively encouraged wives to publicly denounce their husbands for having what they called bourgeois tendencies.
And what actually counted as a bourgeois tendency back then?
Things that seem totally normal to us. Wanting privacy in your home, disciplining your own children, or just prioritizing the well-being of your family over the demands of the state.
That sounds incredibly familiar to what we hear today.
Riker makes that exact connection. He argues that toxic masculinity is simply the modern Western translation of bourgeois tendencies.
Wow.
It's the exact same mechanism. You shame the man for his natural instinct to order his environment, provide for his kin, and protect his home. You turn the culture into an agent of the state, policing him inside his own house.
And this leads directly to what Riker calls the red pill lie, or the freedom paradox.
Yes, this is a crucial point.
We're constantly told that dismantling traditional gender roles is about liberation, right? That it frees everyone. But Riker says it actually delivers slavery. How does he justify that?
He argues that when you remove the father from his role as the primary provider and protector, a vacuum is created. And the state always steps in to fill that void.
So it's a transfer of dependence?
Exactly. Men lost the freedom to lead their families, and in exchange, the family just became dependent on government programs, subsidies, and state institutions.
And he brings some brutal receipts on the financial side of this, particularly regarding the family courts.
The section on child support is incredibly tough. He essentially describes the modern child support system as taxation without representation.
He highlights that one specific story, the guy living in the Dodge ProMaster van.
Right. This is a guy who is working full-time 50, 60 hours a week, but he is forced by a family court to pay 70% of his income into a system for children he is barely even legally allowed to see.
He's living in a van, so his ex-wife and the state can extract his labor.
Riker paints a picture of the modern man as nothing more than a utility, just a wallet with a heartbeat.
And he argues this isn't a glitch in the legal system.
No, he says it's a feature. It is a deliberate transfer of wealth and power from the individual male directly to the state apparatus.
So, if you're listening to this and you realize the system is designed to break you, isolate you, and drain your resources, what are you supposed to do? Because the mainstream advice is always, hey, go get help, go to therapy.
Right, talk it out.
But Riker absolutely slams that door shut, doesn't he?
He tears it off the hinges. He calls it the therapy trap or the victim industrial complex.
Why is he so against mental health treatment?
He's not against mental health itself. He's against the modern method of treating it.
Yeah.
He argues that modern talk therapy was inherently designed for the female mind. It prioritizes verbalizing every emotion, opening up, crying, embracing extreme vulnerability.
And for men?
He argues that for men, this is a literal trap. It strips them of their natural defenses and leaves them completely demoralized.
He uses that infuriating example of the university student in Oregon to prove his point.
Yeah, that case really illustrates the hypocrisy of the system. You had a young male college student, severely depressed, actively suicidal.
And he applies for a mental health aid grant through the school.
A grant specifically designed for underrepresented groups. And he was flatly denied.
Because he was a man.
Explicitly. The board ruled that, quote, men are not an underrepresented group. This is despite the glaring statistical fact that men make up the vast, vast majority of suicide victims.
It's just undeniable proof that the institutions do not care about male survival.
Right. Riker uses that to say, look, the system will not save you.
So if talking doesn't work and the institutions are hostile, what is the alternative? He brings up what he calls the Elon Musk approach.
It's one of the best lines in the book. He quotes Musk saying, I don't talk about my feelings, I build rockets.
I love that.
It perfectly encapsulates Riker's solution for men. Men do not heal through talk therapy, they heal through competence, they heal through action.
Building things.
Exactly. You don't fix a broken man by putting him in a circle and making him cry about his childhood. You fix him by helping him build something, climb something, fight something, or conquer a goal.
Which brings us full circle back to that collusive bonding idea from the Goldman Sachs story. Riker says the ultimate form of resistance isn't political, it's brotherhood.
This is where he brings in the hard data for a solution. He cites CDC data analyzing male mental health, and the numbers are staggering.
What did the data show?
It showed that men who participate in structured, male-only rites of passage, so we're talking the military, fraternities, strict religious orders, those men have a 45% lower suicide rate than the general population.
45% lower.
Yeah.
That is a massive statistical anomaly.
Because bonded men survive. And Riker argues this is the exact reason why the left constantly targets those male-only spaces.
They call the boys clubs, or say they're exclusionary and toxic.
Right. Because a group of brothers who are watching each other's backs, who hold each other to a standard of competence, that is the ultimate fortress against state dependence.
They don't need the government if they have each other.
Exactly. If you isolate a man, you can break him easily. But if he is standing shoulder to shoulder with his brothers, he is infinitely harder to control.
It really reframes this whole push for inclusivity. Riker is essentially saying that inclusivity is just a Trojan horse used to dismantle male bonding.
He says men need to absolutely stop apologizing for wanting their own spaces. It's a matter of survival.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the final section of the book pivots to a call to action. And it's refreshing because it's not the usual go vote or complain on Twitter.
No, Riker's final message is deeply psychological. He tells the reader, you are not broken, you are hijacked.
You are not broken, you are hijacked. That is such a powerful reframe.
It changes your entire posture. Think about it. If you believe you are broken, you sit down and you ask the system for help.
Right.
But if you realize you've been hijacked, you stand up and you fight to take the controls back. He's telling men to reject the victim narrative completely. Do not play their game.
Reclaim the throne.
Exactly. He says the institutional war on men is already won, but only if men agree to stay asleep.
If they take the red pill, the game changes.
The moment they wake up, the illusion shatters.
And man, that is exactly why we are recommending this book today. We have honestly only scratched the surface of the history, the economic philosophy, and the pure strategy in Leftists Eat Themselves.
There is so much more in there.
If you want the full manual for navigating this, you need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now and buy it.
It is absolutely essential reading for this cultural moment, and I'd also highly recommend following the author directly.
Yes, Conrad Riker.
He's putting out incredible analysis constantly. You can find him at Conrad and Riker on Substack, and he's also very active on Twitter.
Definitely go give him a follow. He is articulating things that you are just never going to see on the nightly news.
Never.
And hey, if you found value in this deep dive today, if you want us to keep decoding these kinds of controversial, hard-hitting texts for you, make sure to like and subscribe to our feed right now.
It makes a huge difference.
It really does. It helps to keep the lights on and keeps the truth coming directly to you.
Absolutely.
So we're going to leave you with one final thought from the book. Something for you to carry into your office, your home, and your week. Riker suggests that in a system that is entirely designed to erase you, your personal success is the ultimate act of rebellion.
Think about that. The most punk rock, rebellious thing you can do in 2026 is to be a strong, masculine father who leads his family, achieves competence, and absolutely refuses to apologize for it.
The future belongs to men who refuse to be erased. Go buy the book. We will see you on the next deep dive. Stay dangerous.